approach in reaching our audience over 5 platforms: television, radio, newspaper, online news portal, and mobile app.
Midweek Newspaper, the biggest free English newspaper in Canada. From Parliament Hill to Queen's Park, the Y Media Studios,
how did your meeting go with the Prime Minister of India?
I've sat down and had many conversations with Prime Minister Modi.
Where's the money going?
I think we found pretty strong support.
Next election, we're going to win 5 ridings.
Y Media is the official media partner with the Toronto International Film Festival.
You are watching TIFF on Y Media, the official partners.
Welcome to Y Media, and we are at the Port of Vancouver.
But you stay tuned with Y Media.
Channel Y के entertainment for stay tuned with Y Media special reports.
Reporting from Chandigarh, Channel Y.
Y Media helps with connecting with the communities, creating brand awareness, and increases sales. Y Media works with 100+ international brands. Y Media has also worked with 1,000+ Canadian big and small brands. Y Media Group, the fastest growing media group in North America.
We need strong leadership in this country, we need strong leadership in this province, and we're going to deliver that strong leadership for the people of Ontario. In healthcare, we're investing nearly $50 billion over the next decade. We've expanded Highway 401.
They keep changing their mind about what approach they're going to take. Mr. Ford may not know me as well as he thinks he does. I have negotiated, get them better benefits, and I'm going to deliver the same results for Ontarians.
Because I want to say once again that this is not an election about tariffs. This is an election about Doug Ford's record and the fact that Ontario is getting worse and worse each and every day.
Under the Liberals, they did absolutely nothing. We're making sure that every single person in Ontario is connected to the internet.
Good morning, Premier. This is Imran from Y Media Group. My question is about Liberal. Liberal are saying that it's the wrong time to call election by Ford.
Who do they feel that can lead them through this? Who do they feel that they're going to be protected their jobs, protect their families?
This is Shubi from Y Media. The recent numbers that are coming out, the Liberal, Bonnie Crombie, she's leading. What are your thoughts on that?
Hallway healthcare under the Liberals and the Conservative government of Doug Ford poured gasoline on that, and it's now status quo. I don't think Ontarians are going to fall for it.
Worry about himself to call a snap election in the middle of winter so that he can cling to power and outrun an RCMP investigation. That $189 million should have been put back into our economy to save jobs.
Our number one thing is to protect Ontarians. And that's exactly what we're going to do.
After 7 long years of Doug Ford and the Conservative government here in Ontario, life has never been more difficult.
The people of Mississauga elected me 5 times. Once as an MP, once as a city councillor, and 3 times as mayor with increasing majorities. So if he's not concerned, maybe he should be.
everyone. My name is Yudhu Juswal. I'm the group editor at Y Media, and we all know Ontario elections are in full swing right now. And yes, there has been a lot of other discussions as well. The news cycle has been very heavy for us right here at Y Media. Trump announcing tariffs, announcing so many things at an international level. Then we have the Liberal leadership. Prime Minister Trudeau, he's resigned from his position. There is so much going on at federal level, US, Y Media Foreign Policy Report, but of course at Y Media Political Sensex Ontario Elections 2025. These are very interesting times for us here at Y Media, and I'm sure you would be keeping tabs of all the different news. But to talk more about Ontario elections, is the PC party going to maintain its lead? Are the Liberals going to make it a close contest? NDP, will it bounce back? It's the official opposition in Ontario right now, but right now it's at the third position. We have our co-host Ramona Singh with us. Ramona ji, a very warm welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. You've been following these elections for many, many years now, and here we have Ontario elections. What is your initial take on what's happening here in Ontario?
Well, I think most people are just learning that there's an election. Like you said, right now, we know with the climate in the United States, the tariff war between Canada, US, this is eating up most of the news cycle, the oxygen in the air. And so, given it's winter, it is, ahead of schedule. The scheduled elections were supposed to be held in June of 2026. So now that it's in the dead of winter, in the beginning of 2025, so it's an unexpected time. On the last time Ontario had a winter election, it was 40 years ago. Usually, we go in for elections in June, and then we're used to a federal election in October. So, and usually at those times, we also see municipal elections in October. So during those times, we see a lot of signs everywhere. We usually know it's an election cycle because as we're driving down the street, there are signs on, both sides of the street and on different, front lawns of houses, and there's events and this and that. This election cycle, it's cold. It's scary times for the trade war between U.S. Canada, with job losses we're projecting, 500,000 in Ontario. We're looking at somewhere like 1.3 million in Canada in total. So many different sectors will, collapse because of the trade war. And I think now, even though the Ontario elections, it's been 2 weeks in, another 3 weeks to go. So it's a very quick one. Election day is on February 27th. And if you haven't voted yet, you can actually vote now by going to your Ontario elections office and cast a special ballot. You could do that right now. There's a lot of snowbirds who are in Florida, and they're saying, this is a snap election. We didn't know how do we vote, and they have to, as soon as possible, try to get a mail-in vote. And so it's very quick, and so quick that none of the parties have given us a fully costed platform yet. So every day, all the leaders are making announcements about what they're going to do, but we currently don't have a fully costed platform in terms of what the policies are, what they're going to do, what is the price tag next to it, for essentially the people to be able to assess how realistic their plan is. So it's just kind of like, it's sudden, it's fast, and there's promises made. A lot of them, we don't know what the price tag for those promises are. And then this is also the PC's third election under Doug Ford. It's in the history of Ontario, only one time did a premier, the same premier, same leader of a party win 3 consecutive elections. So it's usually not done, but the climate is different when it comes to tariffs. Premier Ford and PC leader Doug Ford, he's positioned himself very well because of what's been going on with the United States. But we're seeing a difference when it comes to the surge of numbers for Bonnie Crombie, who's the leader of the Ontario Liberals. It's her first election as the leader of the Liberal Party in Ontario, and this is also Marit Stiles' first election as the leader of the NDP party in Ontario.
Yeah, you know what? Lots of things have changed since the last election that happened in 2022. And just for viewers' benefit, I'd like to tell you that Ontario elections were supposed to happen in the year 2026. Premier Ford has called an early election. Many of the Ontarians, they believe it's going to serve Ford's interest. Despite that, as we speak, most of the poll surveys that we see, Premier Ford and his PCs are leading. The PC party is leading in most of the poll surveys. NDP is the official opposition, but if I look at the surveys, 15%, 17%, they're in distant third. The strong 40, 44, 45% support for the PCs. Then the Liberal Party, we see somewhere around 24, 25, 30, around that number. Most of the Ontario that we see, the PCs are quite strong. It's just Toronto. That's a toss between the Tories and the Liberals. But other than that, I would say the Tories are still maintaining a strong hold across Ontario. So if things remain the same, if they do not change in politics, anything can change anytime. 27th of February, that's the election date. Things could change. But if they do not, then I think we're seeing once again a PC majority, back-to-back, third majority for Ford. What do you have to say?
Yeah, I mean, in 2022, the voter turnout was 43%. There's 10 million Ontarians that are eligible to vote, and out of that, 43% came out and vote and gave the PCs a bigger majority than 2018. And in this election, the snap election was called because Premier Ford back then and PC leader Doug Ford said that for tariffs, he framed this snap election around, who's best to take care of Ontarians. And that's why his slogan for this election is Protect Ontario. And then, but he's had the most visibility, right? First, as when it comes to the premiers, he's been chair of the premiers, the talk with President Trump in terms of tariffs. He's been leading that conversation. Then he sported his hat that Canada's not for sale. So he's had a lot of airtime, right? And people know him now. He's been the premier for 7 years, whereas Marit Stiles, this is her first election. Yes, she has become the leader of the NDP since Andrew Horwath, left, stepped down. Now she's the mayor of Hamilton. And Bonnie Crombie, people know her in the Peel region area as the mayor of Mississauga, and now she's the leader of the Liberals in Ontario. So, with all indication, given that last election that was in June 2022 had a low voter turnout at 43%, given it's winter, it could be also another low voter turnout. But usually when parties go to an early election, a snap election, they usually get punished at the polls. So this might be a different circumstance, given that Ontarians are really worried about the future of the economy with the tariffs, but at the same time, it raises a lot of questions when it comes to housing. It's still unaffordable when it comes to healthcare. Hallway medicine is something that the Liberals are pointing out, as well as the NDP. When it comes to education, schools, like all of these things, people are now still asking, like, okay, PC leader Doug Ford had 7 years. What did he accomplish in these 7 years? And has anything improved under his leadership is one of the massive questions. So this is an opportunity now where you even see the Green Party leader, Mike Schneider, Marit Stiles from the NDP, Bonnie Crombie from the Liberals, who are actually picking up some steam in this conversation of was it self-serving for Premier Ford to call an early election when he has a mandate for, until next summer, next year? And was this, because really if the question is, if it's about the tariffs, then he could have waited a week later after, February 1st deadline to see was there going to be tariffs. So he did it the Wednesday before, that Saturday where we all saw President Trump announce that tariffs will go into effect, and then now they've been delayed. So now that we have that 30-day delay for the tariffs between Canada and U.S. until March 4th, now the conversation has left the tariffs and now it's come back onto PC leader Doug Ford's record, right? And then at the same time, you have somebody like Bonnie Crombie, who's doing really well in the polls, given that the Liberals haven't had party status since 2018 when they lost the election very badly under Kathleen Wynne. She's picking up steam because I think maybe it's her style of her way of doing politics. She's very straightforward, and her lines are more around, she starts almost every speech saying, we're in this snap election because Doug Ford doesn't care about you. And she's there with her lines about, wasting what she says is $7 billion, saying that healthcare, promising everybody in Ontario a family doctor to, in the 4 years, it's going to cost $3 billion. So she's very focused on healthcare, making sure there's like 3,000 lack of doctors. So she's saying we're going to be able to graduate them and get them into place and make sure we bring those jobs back and fulfill that need. NDP at the same time is talking about gridlock and traffic as well and affordability, and they're the ones who proposed even from 2022 election under Andrew Horwath and now under Mayor Stiles about Highway 407 being free for truckers, and then within the first 100 days trying to negotiate with 407 to make sure it's tolls are removed. So there's a lot of stuff happening because they're pointing out saying, what's the state of Ontario? Has it been better in the last 7 years? Now, hopefully people are tuning in now. I know Y Media is hosting debates, making sure that we invite the candidates so you can hear more about what your local candidates think about, the state of Ontario and what they plan on doing under their party banner. But it's to be seen. I think the poll numbers are still very strong for Ford, but there was another poll that was released that what do Ontarians think? Do they believe him on authenticity, the fact that this is a tariff election? And a lot of them said, no, it's self-serving. And then he had the hot mic moment saying that, he was 100% happy that Donald Trump became president, won the election in the United States. So that's kind of been a bit of backlash saying, you were there during the first term when there was COVID, and when President Trump, when he stopped the shipment of, masks and whatnot to Canada, because he said our people need it first. And so they were all kind of reminding the voters, like, do you remember? And here's Ford saying he's happy that Trump is back in. He's happy about that. But meanwhile, he's calling an election against Trump's tariffs. So it looks very self-serving. It doesn't help that we just heard about a lawsuit recently. Again, obviously allegations, but it's from a developer. And it has to do with, again, Amato, who stepped down, who was chief of staff for housing minister. Again, his name was pulled back in terms of rezoning. The lawsuit is, I think it's for $1.9 million. It's a lot of stuff. Sorry, it's for $2.1 million. And the developer has claimed that there were fees that were collected over the duration of time because the land was purchased under the guise of rezoning. Now, that's allegations. It is a lawsuit. That's to be seen. Ford has said it has nothing to do with him. But again, it reminds you of the Greenbelt scandal that took place that was reversed. That would have been like $8.3 billion level of scandal. So there's a lot of things coming up now when you look at healthcare, education, the scandals. We know that the Ford government has announced a lot of investment on infrastructure, highway, this, that. What's been accomplished in the 7 years? What has this government completed? What are those things? I think it's a lot of big numbers, and we're trying to understand how likely. We've heard new things about building a tunnel under the 401. Is that safe? What is the price tag on that? What is the likelihood? If we're building tunnels for traffic, why aren't we not building subways? There's just a lot of confusion around all this, and it doesn't help that the other parties who are trying to take the top job don't have a costed platform. So again, it almost gives him the advantage when, and then again, it's winter, and all we're talking about is federal politics.
Yeah, very good points that you just made. I think first things first. All these things are very important that you just asked, and more often than not, Liberal leader Bonnie Crombie, she's also mentioning all these things. She says, Premier Ford, he just wants to get ahead of the RCMP investigation regarding the Greenbelt scandal, $8.3 billion. That's a big issue. I just heard Premier Ford being asked this question. So he said he's not been interviewed or called by RCMP as of now. And Premier Ford said they're going to cooperate 1,000%. He said, and I'm just quoting him, 1,000%, because Premier Ford says they've done nothing wrong. But let's see. Let's wait for the full investigation to complete. But this is what the Liberal leader is claiming, and we've also told you what the Premier Ford is claiming right now. The other things that you just mentioned, yes, there are a lot of challenges. The housing, yes, it's a challenge. The healthcare, affordability, so many other factors is still lingering on. It's not that Premier Ford, they first got elected in 2018, then in 2022. I mean, if you look at the last 7 odd years, it's not that they've done too many things. Definitely there are many questions, and then you're right, he has his share of scandals as well. But the point is the Liberal talk really resonating with the voters? That is the key question. As much as, yes, they were decimated to the third position, single digits, no official party status, so many other things in the Kathleen Wynne era. But then, here comes Bonnie Crombie. She's moved the numbers higher to the point that now we have NDP, the official opposition, at 12, 14, 15, 16%, and Liberals right now moving in the zone of 25. At least they're getting there. So I think if Liberal Party manages to score at least 3 to 4 points, things could get interesting. Why I'm saying that? Because NDP is way down. So to bring Conservatives or a Liberal PC party down from 44, 45, 43 to below 38, it'll definitely take something. I mean, she's talking about healthcare. I know, but the question is, as I was discussing in a program earlier as well, I've seen Bonnie Crombie. She was MP, Member of Parliament. Then, as she was just mentioning here in our opening promo as well, the people of Mississauga, they have elected her as an MP. Yeah, we know that. You became an MP first. Then, Ward 5, you ran as a councillor. You became a councillor. Then you became the mayor. Fine. All things good. 2014 and then again 2018 and 2022. I mean, I don't think so there's going to be much of an opposition if she hadn't chosen to become the Liberal Party leader. She would have comfortably stayed there as a mayor, not much of a challenge for her, all good. But then as a mayor or as an MP or as a councillor, most of the time you are in Mississauga. And now as a leader, I'm sure she must have traveled a lot, she must have seen different parts of Ontario, but then here is someone from 2018 or even before, Doug Ford was traveling a lot in Ontario. He has his MPPs in place. They are campaigning regularly. This is the third election for most of his MPPs, his cabinet ministers. So they have enough fundraising with them. They're quite experienced. They have built good community connections. On the other side, if you have a look on the other side, for NDP and Liberal parties, it's a challenge to bring candidates on board. It's a challenge for them to do fundraising. It's a challenge for them to be visible across the province. So I think that is an issue. From my side, I think in a good democracy, I would always love to see a very good competition. I would have definitely wanted to see all the three parties doing well. Then any party wins that's okay. But I think a lot more work had to be done. So maybe the strategy was very clear. Everyone knows this. It's an open secret now. Have an election, have a snap election, and then keep it to the minimum days, and don't do too many debates. The candidates who won't go for, we at Y Media, every election we try and do election debates. So we're going to have election debates here at Y Media. Once again, we are reminding all our viewers, please do watch our Y Media election debates. We will be doing debates for different cities from Brampton, Mississauga, Toronto, and so many other cities. So right here on Y Plus and Channel Y, we will be carrying on Y Media election debates. Now these election debates, I'm not sure how many candidates will show up from the PC party, but they know that the Liberals and the NDP, they're not that prepared. They could come up with a surprise, and maybe Bonnie has her plans to spoil the apple cart for Premier Ford, but I doubt that's going to happen, because what is it that will resonate? A scandal, $8.3 billion. If this doesn't resonate, what else will? RCMP investigation. Then is there any, and most of the Ontarians, they know, this election serves well for Ford. So what else can they do?
Well, here's the thing with Ford is that, you know, every time he tried to do something, and if it was not popular, he would reverse it. So in a way, it's kind of like they see it as, because here's the thing, like usually when it comes to branding, conservative parties are known as being like more fiscally, responsible in terms of understanding how things are spent, and that's usually a conservative branding. And then you have like the liberal branding that's been as of like, you know, from provincial to federal is a lot of mass spending and at times going very, you know, left. We saw that happen with Kathleen Wynne. We saw that happen under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. And then you have the NDP who's, you know, always had a challenge in terms of being able to be trusted for, majority party. And what we've seen with Doug Ford is that he's been more like a very, the way he's governed is like what we've seen in liberal governments in the past, as well as even on a provincial level. So it's so the voters know that if there's something that they don't like, because when it comes to spending and the scandals and all of that stuff, we've kind of seen that from the Liberals anyway. But the difference here is that his first year when he got in that first year in 2018 when he got in, he did massive cuts when it came to education and healthcare, and then that was a massive backlash. And then there was COVID kicked in, by 2020, and then he changed his tune, and then, his vote, like his popularity went up because he was the guy who was on TV every day, and he was, a lot, like his tone was different. There was a sympathetic Ford that came out, and then his favorability went really high. So, he was there during the crisis of COVID. And then after that, it was just like, okay, then there was the, massive what happened with inflation, right? And then it wasn't, again, his fault because that's the federal government. So then that became a Trudeau problem and not his problem. So every time he's kind of just been, he's had a lot of good political luck, being that, for example, let's go back to 2018. If everybody recalls, it was Patrick Brown that was the leader of the PCs in running up to the election in 2018 against Kathleen Wynne and Andrew Horwath.
Just to say, proud to be here today.
The election that Patrick Brown stepped down, he had the accusation, the scandals. Then he stepped down, he resigned, and then it opened up the field for a PC leadership election. And then you saw, it was Caroline Mulroney. It was who became health minister after, I forget her name right now, and Doug Ford, and then Christine Elliott. Yeah. They jumped in, and then Doug Ford at the time was running to become running for mayor against John Tory. And then when the seat opened up and Patrick Brown wasn't there anymore, and it was just months before the provincial elections, Doug Ford won. And, so he was at the right place at the right time. This was right after he lost his brother, right, who was a beloved mayor in Rob Ford in Toronto. So there was a movement of the Ford supporters that were there for his brother. They kind of came over to support Doug Ford. The Liberals were there for 15 years, so it was anything but Kathleen Wynne, anything but Liberal. And so he was at the right place at the right time, won that election. Anybody who would have been leader of the PCs then, had it been Patrick Brown, had it been any of the other candidates, they would have been premier. And then what happened was, then COVID hit. And then his favorability went up because he was the guy that was there saying, I'm going to get you, the masks and this and, the shots and the boosters and whatever, right? All that stuff. And then when inflation was a massive issue in the spending, then it was Trudeau's problem, not his, right? So then, and then he went into, that was when he did his 2022 election, because it wasn't his fault. The conversation had changed to affordability now. It was no longer on record on anything like healthcare, education, or this or that. It was none of that stuff, right? Or lockdown and open lockdown, all the craziness that went around that. And then, so he got a bigger mandate. And now, again, he knew that if he waited till next year, June, a lot of things would have changed. Bonnie Crombie's, as a new leader, would have made more of an impact. I mean, now people are getting to know her because it's an election cycle. Then maybe the tariffs wouldn't be an issue. And then, it's hard to run a third election. It's very hard for any of this, like the same leader, to run a third election. The lifespan is very short. It's 4 to 8 years. So again, it was that timing that he took care of. And then, now mind you, the federal Liberals are in a leadership election. So Bonnie Crombie's support on the provincial Liberal side, because usually you have almost the same people that work provincially and federally, right? Because the elections are never the same time. So now the people who would have worked on the Ontario election for the Liberals are working for Chrystia Freeland's campaign and whatever's happening there. So if you notice, Bonnie Crombie, like day one of the election campaign, it was just her and one of her candidates in front of a hospital. But whereas she didn't look as organized, right? She doesn't have a costed platform, but yet she's doing much better than expected. Then you look at the NDP, like the only time that in Ontario an NDP government was there, it was a bad experience for many people, right? Because of just the mismanagement. So the NDP's been trying to kind of reclaim this thing that they can govern. Now, Merritt Stiles, she seems to be the only one who speaks French and English because she takes her time to speak both languages. She reminds me of Hillary Clinton, not because of policies, but I think she just sounds and looks like Hillary Clinton. So when I look at her, I'm like, she's striking a balance between, kind of sticking it to, Ford as the incumbent, but also sounding very premier-like. It's just, she's had experience with the unions and saying she's going to, make a better deal for Ontarians. But unfortunately, we've seen that happen before where the NDP put out their policy costed platform and then they're off by some dollar figures, massive dollar figures where they miscalculated. So they kind of have to get their act together because Ontarians need to feel like they can trust them. And then, so it's a toss-up. I think Doug Ford's been very lucky politically in terms of he's at the right place at the right time with the right narrative. Let's see if he's able to pull a rabbit out of a hat in this election cycle, given that, it's early, it's in the dead of winter. If it's a lower voter turnout, it might favor him even more. But will it be an exception? Because usually you get punished for calling early elections. And so is that there? He still has the support of a lot of the unions, which is, usually that's a more liberal NDP thing. He's been able to still maintain some of that support. In the last election in 2022, we held debates. None of the PC candidates showed up except one. And that was Parmeet Zakaria and, for Brampton South. Other than that, none of them showed up. And it's, and again, right now we're kind of trying to see, are they going to show up? Because they're going to have to answer questions. Usually when you're an incumbent and you've been there for so long, you do have to answer questions. So now, are they at a disadvantage if they're not there? And the other candidates are, saying the stuff they can say and they can't defend themselves? Or is it that if they show up, they may say something that might not be favorable and then it goes on repeat? You've had this happen where you've interviewed a politician and they said certain things and then the next day they're kicked out of caucus, right? So they're very careful, because when you give them airtime, they could go off script. They, how do they answer specific questions about, you guys made all these policy announcements, what's happened on housing, on healthcare, on education, affordability, transit, like what's happened, and can you think of what's been accomplished under the Ford government? You've covered news every day.
Yeah.
Do you recollect what's been accomplished?
Yeah, there are a few things they would want to take credit. They would want to say we have put money in healthcare. They would want to claim that, and whether there was a hospital built and won. Then there was funding for Trillium in Mississauga. Then they're saying there's funding for Peel Memorial Hospital. And with full disclosure, I want to tell you that yes, I'm one of the board members at the foundation at William Osler, so I know what the plans are. And I think we could see a hospital, if things go in the right direction, we could see a hospital by, I guess, 2029, 2030. Yeah, we could see that, yeah. So, of course, you could say that whether it's Vaughan, Mississauga, Toronto, other parts of Ontario, and including the region of Peel, that yes, we've provided some sort of funding for healthcare. That's number one. But on the healthcare, on the flip side, I would also want to mention that yes, the wait times haven't reduced. That has to be reduced. There is still a shortage of doctors and nurses. Also, I want to mention there are many emergency departments in different parts of Ontario that emergency departments had to shut down, and they had to tell that yes, we would be coming back after 4 hours, 8 hours, or even one day, and you go to the next hospital for an emergency department. Imagine reaching a hospital and you're facing emergency and you have to go to the next one. So this is about a brief about the healthcare. The other part where they could say is that yes, the economy and jobs were fine. Yes, that's okay. The third part right now they're saying is we've seen Canada not for sale. The hat is selling quite fast, and Doug Ford wants to, say that yes, he's Captain Canada right now. So he says he's taking seat front and center, and he's better to deal with the tariffs and everything than any other. They could claim that. Now, without blurring the lines, if I had to pick just one strength, without blurring the lines, of all the three, or all the four, I would say, leaders of the main parties in Ontario. There are only 4 main parties. There could be others, but 4 main parties in Ontario. 4 points which I think are strength, and the 4 challenges. Let's do that, and maybe you can also do that. So without blurring the lines, where do you want me to start? Should I start with Ford? Okay, Ford. I think the best part about Ford is that he's very active. That is one of the reasons, you see whether it's Trump, whether it's Ford, or whether it's Patrick Brown, they're very active. They will be attending the events, they will be reaching out. So that has been the strength of Premier Ford. He's very active. And whether, I know there were one of our friends who do business in Hamilton, and they called Premier Ford. He will give out his cell phone number. And he's very accessible. He would show up the very next day, ask what are the problems. And he's a live wire. Right now, if you see, he's active. He's all over the place. It's not that once after winning or anything, he likes to be very active. So that, as much as you have to give the results, I'm all about results, but then people like that. He's active with his cabinet ministers, with his candidates, so people like that. The challenge for Ford, I would say $8.3 billion, that's a lot of money. And that's a huge, huge scandal. And to the point that he had to take it back. As much as Ford is claiming there are 1,000% cooperating and they've done nothing wrong, but then why would you take it back? Why would you roll it back? And there are so many questions still unanswered on that. So that is a challenge. So this is a strength, this is a challenge. For Bonnie Crombie, most of her political career has been unscathed. There hasn't been much of a controversies. Yes, there have been some minimal controversies, but not to the point that, it could be an end of her career. So that's the strength for Bonnie Crombie. But I think the challenge for her is she had known this a while ago, that yes, she could be facing elections. It was an open secret last summer that we could head to an early election, maybe, so in late 2024 or early 2025, and here we are, early 2025, we are having an election. So I think there was time for the Liberal Party to at least have candidates in place. They would have campaigned. You're right, they have to get their act together, and especially the leaders. If you are a leader of a Liberal Party, who else would you blame? There are many people who are not even the candidates. So I think that is a challenge for her. For Meredith Stiles, I've met her. She was here in the studio. Very gracious, without blurring lines. I would definitely want to say that very gracious. You've drawn parallels with Hillary Clinton, but I would say, I would say very gracious. She has good knowledge about the issues. Actually, even if you ask Bonnie, she has good knowledge about the issues, and so does. And the one good thing about about Bonnie and Merritt, both of them, they speak up their mind very openly. They'll speak up their mind. But the challenge for Merritt Stiles is that their party is not remembered for the right reasons, and they're not perceived as the party who will be forming the government. That's the challenge for Merritt Stiles. Green Party, Mike Schreiner, I think amazing guy. We all know him. But Green Party, at least in Canada, yes, we've seen Green Party doing well in Europe, but at least in Canada or in North America, even in India for that matter, they don't go that far. That's the challenge that Mike Schneider will be facing this time as well, because as much as NDP also has this similar challenge, but still NDP has its own support base. They still get a lot of seats, and last time they became the official opposition as well. Even at the federal level in 2011 with Jack Layton, they won 99 seats. There was an orange wave, especially in Quebec. But that's the challenge with the Green Party, that people know they'll always, most of the time, they'll remain in single digits. So that is a challenge for Mike Schneider. But I think a very nice guy. He'll talk very politely. He knows his issues, and he's been working very hard as well. Yeah. So I want your take. One challenge that you see for all the four leaders, main party leaders, and one strength that you see for all the four main leaders.
Well, when it comes to Ford, like I mentioned, one of his strengths is that he's very relatable when he talks, and we know he makes U-turns. If it's not popular, he'll do what is popular. So I think maybe the voters feel like they have more of a sway on him, that he's not going to get too far out. He'll turn around on that. His advantage in all of this is that he's going to be, still part of the talks of the tariffs. I mean, even though he's in an election, he's still the premier, and in emergency cases, he has to act as the premier. And in this case, he's gonna, he said he's gonna go down to the U.S. and he's gonna talk to the governors, and try to push for this. And he's still at the table with all the other premiers. So it looks like he's very much so governing and that sort of active. But there's also a difference between make work and doing work, right? Like, I recall there was there was a person, it was a story about a person who stays at work until 9 p.m. and then they thought their boss is going to be like, oh, good job, you work so hard. But then at the same time, it was like, well, how inefficient are you throughout the day that you have to come in at first thing in the morning and leave last at the end of the day? What did you do with your time? Because if you're very efficient with your time, it wouldn't take you this many hours in the day to do your job. Right? So we have a misunderstanding of what's make work and what's actual work, because you could be doing a lot of things, but is it equaling to results? Because in a lot of positions, it's about the results that you yield, right? If you're in any position where you're in operations or sales, it's really about, if it's operations, it's like how much efficiency did you bring in to the operations? If you're in sales, it's like how much money did you earn? And in an operations, also how much money did you save? So in politics, when you're governing, it's also about results. How much money did you spend of taxpayer dollars, and what did you get in terms of what was accomplished? What is the return on investment that accomplished? We talked about deficit spending when it comes for investments, infrastructure, being able to attract investors in, or deficit spending for just consumption, which doesn't have much of a return on investment. And where's that fine line, right? So when you're in government for so long, you must have, I know there's dollar values given to projects that take years, half a decade to show a result. If you say you're going to build a highway, of course everybody understands it's not going to be built in 12 months, but what's been done so far, right? And it's also about showing the short-term wins versus the long-term wins. And all his promises have been so long. Now he's promising the tunnel under the 401. Obviously, if we think that's going to happen, it won't be in the next 2 years. It'll be a lot longer. But it's also at the same time, if you make policy promises that are so far ahead, do you believe it's going to get done? And there's just so many challenges around some of these ideas. So that's his disadvantage. His disadvantage really is, what did you get done? That is like tangible, right? That I can say, you promised this on day one and then it was delivered, right? And then and also, you're at the helm of things. If there aren't enough family doctors and nurses, why are they not? Like, what have we done in an investment to make sure we attract them, right? And if there's some deficit spending attached to that, to make sure, because Bonnie Crombie's talking about, what did she say? Something like about how medical school for certain part of Northern Ontario is going to be covered, and then it's going to be pegged at certain salaries if they promise they go to medical school and then they're going to work in the community in the Northern Ontario. That's a little bit, that's an investment. We know at least if you're going to pay for medical school for people to graduate, then they're committing to providing, medical care in that community. So that would be investment, right? In terms of where there would be a return on that investment. So that's that. When it comes to the Liberals, well, it's hard. When you don't have party status, it also means you don't have funding, right? When you're below party status lines, it means you don't have funding to be able to have research, to have staff, to have any of these things, right? And usually it's hard to get donations when you're not really able to do stuff. You need money still to run campaigns. You need money to attract. Like, people don't usually want to run for a party they know is going to lose, right?
I don't want to lose your thought. Please carry on with that. But since you're mentioning this, very importantly, if I can show the video once again on full screen. And if you look at this video, we were there at this press conference, and not many media showed up. I mean, if you look at the ethnic media, it was only Y Media. Then we had two other media houses show up at this press conference. Imagine the leader is there, you have the candidates there, but not much of the media showed up there. So you're right, I mean, they're having tough time in managing the affairs, but we would definitely want to see a healthy competition. I don't want you to lose your thought. Please go ahead, carry on. Yeah.
And healthy competition comes with, having the funding to do it, and obviously timing. In politics, it's all about the right timing. As much as that's why people wait to announce their candidacy at the right timing. Do you think, for example, if Mark Carney decided he was going to run in 2022, do you think that wouldn't have been the right timing for him? He would have been associated with the Trudeau brand, and he wouldn't be positioned the way he is right now as somebody who most Canadians don't know, but seems to be doing really well in these polls in terms of, who's best to take on Trump negotiations. So given this sort of climate, right, so usually it's hard to attract good quality candidates, or even candidates who are going to say, you know what, I'm going to put my name out, I'm going to spend money, I'm going to raise money and run in a riding where I think it's an uphill battle. Mind you, the people who are running right now also, like, if the PCs win in this election, it's going to be very hard for the same leader to take them to a fourth election. It's also going to be a lot harder for some of these seats to remain blue, right? So whoever runs right now for the Liberals is probably looking at like a 2-election cycle before they could win, and investing really their time in terms of use the election to raise their profile, within the community, and then work throughout the 4 years until there's a next election. So that's also a strategy. But so here's the thing, I think, so that's the disadvantage for Bonnie Crombie, for the Ontario Liberals. What's the advantage? The advantage is they're so low, the only way is up. Statistically, you can't do worse than they're doing from not having party status to actually, getting a few more seats. Now, I think she has this ability to fight. She's shown both sides. There's the calm Bonnie Crombie, and then there is the I'm angry Bonnie Crombie. And when you watch her, she has a way of kind of also getting you angry as you watch her with what she's saying. And she's very good with her the terminology she uses, the way she attacks. So perhaps that's getting her traction. It reminds me a lot like Pierre Poilievre, who's done really well in the polls previously to the Liberal leadership federally, but he did really well because he was always known as the conservative attack sort of person in terms of opposition and be able to point out stuff. And he really raised his profile as the finance critic, and he did that very well with his communication styles and his the verbiage and the language he uses and his timing. And so she kind of reminds me of that kind of style, to be able to be, because she sounds like opposition to the incumbent, being Doug Ford in this case. When it comes to Marit Stiles, yeah, you're right. Most Ontarians, I don't know if they feel comfortable with an NDP government, although she seems very competent, knowledgeable. All of those things are there for her. She's bilingual, but unfortunately, she's not up to date with her numbers, which is more of a negative for her because she was official opposition. She has, that status. She has the funding. She has the party status. She has MPPs. She was an MPP in the previously before she became leader. So she should be a lot more fine-tuned with numbers and be able to rhyme them off, especially given that Ontarians, or really Canadians, feel like, they want a government that understands the economy and is fiscally responsible to a degree. She should be on top of that to be able to rebrand herself as like the NDP that knows her numbers, that is costed, that when she says about a promise, she knows what it means in terms of investment, in terms of the return on investment, and all of that. So that's unfortunate. When it comes to the Green Party, Mike Schneider, when you see him at a debate, you think, wow, he's so knowledgeable when he speaks. Definitely that's there. But, I think they're not known as the party that can steer the economy. So, yeah, he's got 2 seats, which is, his and another seat. So it'll be interesting to know if he can increase any of those. But during this time, I think now the conversation is really about the economy, and that's to be seen. Mind you, now that we're in the tariff talks, you're seeing the federal government do what they can, from foreign affairs to from defense to trade and transport, and so we all also acknowledging that it's the federal government's responsibility on tariffs, but also on a regional, like on a provincial level. What did our province do in terms of their key relationships with governors in the United States to be able to get them to stand up? Now, maybe the climate isn't so that Republican governors can really stand up to President Trump, and maybe that's why we're not really seeing much support from the governors that we would have hoped had enough relationships with Ontario to be able to stand up for Ontario. We haven't really seen it to the same way, so that's a challenge right there. So yeah, let's see. I mean, it's 3 weeks to go, and you can vote right now if you go to Elections Ontario office and a special ballot, advance voting. That's another thing. Usually it's a lot longer now. It's like 2 days. It's a winter election, so we want to make sure that we can get out there and vote. Elections Ontario is fast track hiring 55,000 positions to try to fulfill the needs to make sure they're meeting the demands. But yeah, it's we're all probably expecting it's going to be a PC win, but I think it's still too soon, because now that the tariffs talks have been delayed for those 30 days, I think the next 3 weeks we're waking up more to, hey, there's an election. Usually most elections will determine how the outcome is in the last 2 weeks. Given in the last week, you'll really feel what the momentum is and which way it's going to go, because elections do matter. People will tune in more, and then maybe that's when they're going to give a grade to an incumbent government versus the newcomers.
Yeah. And I was just checking the numbers for the fundraising. I still remember, one of the interviews that we did with Bonnie Crombie as well, and I was listening to one of the other statement as well. She was planning to raise $10 million because when she came early on as a Liberal Party leader, so I knew she has to build the party right from the base, and then among other things, of course she has a name recognition. That's not an issue, but she would want to have more name recognition for herself and her party candidates. So the target that she kept was 10 million. I just checked, I think 10 million in 2024. And she knew there's going to be an early election. But I think they were able to collect around 5.4 million. So 10 million was collected as fundraising by the PC party. And the NDP, they said they've done close to $4 to $5 million. So do you think fundraising was an issue?
Well, I mean, we know that federally and provincially, the Conservatives do really well when it comes to fundraising. And it even helps when you're an incumbent. So imagine when you're the premier, it's a lot easier to sell $2,000 tickets for an evening with the premier or having him attend an event. You know, because people want access. They want access to a premier. They want access to the government to make sure, they can talk to them, get their issues noticed, exchange those business cards to be able to follow up. So that's a big deal. So it's always, when you are the person that everybody wants to meet, of course it's a lot easier to be able to fundraise. But I think now it's also, what do we get? I think that's the key question. Okay, what do we get, right, so far? And what are we given? Because usually, what is the best prediction for the future? Usually, in anything, when it comes to business, right, you look at your numbers, you look at your previous numbers, you look at your client list, you look at your revenue, you look at your overhead to be able to even project what you're going to do now and to be able to plan. Even in friendships, how do you know you can rely on a friend? It's because that friend consistently showed up when they were supposed to or when you gave them a call. Like, usually we make decisions or predictions based on previous events, right? That's the only way we get some level. Yeah, no one can read the future, right? But we make very good estimated guesses based on our previous experiences. And so I think now Ontarians are like, okay, what happened in the last 7 years? And if that's any indication, that will be for the next 4 years. Now, if that is good, then I think indication will be that the PCs will return. If it's not, if they don't want more of that, which is what they saw. Like, the reason Joe Biden, for example, in the States, Joe Biden and then Kamala Harris didn't win, and Kamala Harris, I mean, the Democrats lost badly. Why? Because they said, even I heard Democrats say, they said, we can't have what happened the last 4 years happen again, right? When things hurt so bad, people want to change. Now, the question remains, are Ontarians hurt real bad? And if they are, who do they blame? Do they blame Trudeau? Because he's gone, almost, like a few weeks, he won't be around. And so who do they actually blame? And if it's not the federal government, will they look at it as the province? Right? When they blamed Kathleen Wynne in that election, she was giving everything away. Like, she was promising something for everybody in every income bracket and everything. People didn't want it. Right now, the reason Trudeau stepped down is because people are like, we can't do the 9 years, especially the last 5 years, we can't have it repeat. So now the question remains, is this because Ontario is not doing well. But who do they blame is the reason? Is it federal government? Is it the provincial government? Is it the local government? Is the main thing. So let's see if really Doug Ford has many political lives in terms of he is somehow positions it in such a way, and a lot of it is luck, a lot of it is positioning, that sometimes the blame goes to someone else. Like in June of 2022, when the last provincial election was, that was when it was just like, it was not a thing. Like, do you remember? Because then it was around the same time when the Liberals went, and then it was the Afghanistan pullout by Biden, and then that was the headlines again. So Afghanistan, the massive pullout of American troops, Canadian troops, that took a lot of the headline too. So it's just so it's always the timing of who's taking the most oxygen over the airwaves, and now with President Trump, it's a whole federal issue. So let's see if and the thing with Ford is when he talks, he's very likable, right? Like, he's very folksy and this and that, and he's become a lot better at answering questions when he's asked questions of the media. But it's gonna come down to the voters. Who do they think is responsible for the state of affairs in Ontario?
Yeah, and before we wrap today's show, we're already watching visuals from, as we're talking elections in the snow. It's very difficult to campaign, but we are watching visuals. Y Media is there on ground zero. Y Media is there on ground zero. You see all these visuals. Yes, there's, and this is, by the way, Brampton East. I think one of the tough ridings for all the three parties. We have the incumbent, Hardeep Karewal, there with Premier Ford. They're campaigning right there in Brampton East. This is Graham, he's from Brampton North once again, and But for Brampton East, I think this is going to be tough riding for all the. Okay, Premier Ford is acting as the host for Y Media right now, and he's interviewing Hardeep Garewal here. That's good. That's good. But my question is Martin Singh from Brampton East, and we also have Vicky Dillon from the Liberal Party. So who's going to win this riding? That's $1 million question. But once again, we'd like to tell you, what do you have to say about the Brampton ridings, Brampton Centre, Brampton South, Pravmeet Sarkari, I think it's not going to be easy for anyone to beat him, but let's see how it goes. Brampton South. Brampton Centre has become kind of interesting. We have a former councillor, now a cabinet minister, Charmaine Williams in Brampton Centre, and we have a regional councillor, Martin Medeiros. He's quite popular. He's well known. He's from the Port East community. So he's quite well known there. He has some part of his area in the riding now. So it's going to be an interesting contest in Brampton Centre. Brampton East, I was already mentioning. I think this is a very hotly contested seat. The NDP, they are pinning their hopes. This is the backyard of Jagmeet Singh. This is where we all know that NDP has done reasonably well in this riding. Brampton East, and Gurratan Singh has been winning from this riding. He lost last time though because of the blue wave to Hardeep Garewal. But then the Liberals, they would also want to win this riding. And this has been, this is one riding which keeps on flipping even at the federal level or even at the provincial level, whether it was Bramley, Gore, Malton. We saw this riding was red, then it became blue, then red. So many things happening in this riding, Brampton East. And if we talk about Brampton West, Amarjot Sandhu, he's been there for many years now. This will be, once again, his third election. So I think he came as an international student, then became an MPP, and he's done reasonably well for himself there. So that'll be an interesting riding too. So out of all the 5 ridings, what do you have to say?
Well, I think when it comes to Brampton, it's a whole different level of politics. It depends on what's happening on the ground. Brampton's always had its own economy, its own way of doing things. It's right, so it's very hard to see, is it the leader's effect? Is it the local candidate? I think the local candidates have a big play in Brampton ridings, more specifically Brampton East, because it's based on their connections, it's based on the people they know, and really how much pressure you can put on the people to sway which way, because everybody kind of knows everybody, and especially having these candidates, there's going to be a lot of overlap in terms of support. So it's really, who do they talk to last, and who do they really drive to the poll, like the polling locations to vote. And even at then, you still don't know how it's going to turn out. So it could go anyway, really, because Brampton's very different, I think, in that sense. Brampton, if we're talking about active communities, it's probably one of the most active communities. Like, there's always something happening. It's not like the sleepy towns throughout Canada, even sleepier than, in Ontario. Brampton's a whole nother beast. Now, talking about Brampton, Mayor Patrick Brown's mother-in-law is running against Bonnie Crombie in her riding. So that's something.
Mississauga Cooksville.
Yes. Yeah. And so that's something interesting to watch. Mind you, it's Bonnie Crombie's backyard, so I don't think people are thinking, it's going to be much of a fight, but let's see. I don't know. Anything can happen. So Brampton will be very interesting, I think. For East, Centre seems to be the most one that could toss whichever way between PCs or Liberal. And so let's see, because you have 2 friends who were councillors, right? There were remember on council, there was the council that was against mayors. They were always on the same side, so that's also interesting to see that. But yeah, they all have name recognition, and it'll be interesting to see what they're able to pull on terms of their ground game. Usually when you're a councillor, it's assumed that you have a bigger ground game because you've won many elections as your own brand, and now you add your brand with the party brand, and let's see if they can pull it, versus if you're a candidate who hasn't been elected at different levels of government, for sure.
Yeah, and this was Mississauga for you, this was Brampton for you, and we will carry on, Y Media will carry on its ground zero coverage from Mississauga, Brampton, Toronto, Vaughan, Markham, and right across Ontario, Y Media Political Sensex Ontario elections. So I wish we had more time, but thank you so much for your time, and we will carry on discussion at Y Media Newsroom. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hope you enjoyed today's discussion. Thank you so much. Stay tuned with Y Media. Once again, we'd like to remind you, Ramona ji and myself, we will be doing the election debates. And in this election debates, we will be inviting candidates. Please do follow our election debates right here at Y Media Plus and Channel Y. For details on the timings, you can text or call 416-475-5000. Thank you.
We need strong leadership in this country. We need strong leadership in this province, and we're going to deliver that strong leadership for the people of Ontario. In healthcare, we're investing nearly $50 billion over the next decade. We've expanded Highway 401.
They keep changing their mind about what approach they're going to take. Mr. Ford may not know me as well as he thinks he does. I have negotiated, get them better benefits, and I'm going to deliver the same results for Ontarians.
Because I want to say once again that this is not an election about tariffs. This is an election about Doug Ford's record and the fact that Ontario is getting worse and worse each and every day.
Under the Liberals, they did absolutely nothing. We're making sure that every single person in Ontario is connected to the internet.
Good morning, Premier. This is Imran from Y Media Group. My question is about Liberal. Liberal are saying that it's the wrong time to call election by Ford.
Who do they feel that can lead them through this? Who do they feel that they're going to be protected their jobs, protect their families?
This is Shubi from Y Media. The recent numbers that are coming out, the Liberal Bonnie Crombie, she's leading. What are your thoughts on that?
Hallway healthcare under the Liberals and the Conservative government of Doug Ford poured gasoline on that, and it's now status quo. I don't think Ontarians are going to fall for it.
Worry about himself to call a snap election in the middle of winter so that he can cling to power and outrun an RCMP investigation. That $189 million should have been put back into our economy to save jobs.
Our number one thing is to protect Ontarians. And that's exactly what we're going to do.
After 7 long years of Doug Ford and the Conservative government here in Ontario, life has never been more difficult.
The people of Mississauga elected me 5 times. Once as an MP, once as a city councillor, and 3 times as mayor with increasing majorities. So if he's not concerned, maybe he should be.